get started. So, good morning, everybody. My name is Sarah Sullivan, and I want to welcome you to today's service of the University Unitarian Universalist Fellowship. We're really glad that you joined us today. We have a wonderful speaker, so settle in. Go ahead and turn off any devices that might distract you. And we're going to start with committee moments. So if there are members or chair of committees who have an announcement, please go ahead and raise your hand and I will call on you. Joey?
Yeah, I have just been off the chat with Marianne Feldheim, who has asked me on her behalf to remind you guys about the food and fun drive for Second Harvest. Again, we're collecting on Monday evenings from 5 to 7 and from Saturday mornings from 10 to 12. So if you want to come up to the church and drop off some stuff, and like Paula did last week, visit for a while, that's lovely. We'd love to see you. The other thing about that, and I'm also supposed to say that we have a SAC meeting today at 11:55, and you should have gotten it on your email. If you didn't, I'm sure if you contact one of us by text or email, we can get that information out to you. So we'll see everybody later at the SAC meeting at 11:55. And let me tell you something, folks. This lady, Marianne Feldheim, she has been a dynamite leader for this group, and SAC is just doing great work. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you, Joey. Thank you, everyone on SAC, for all the work that you're doing on this effort. Kelly?
Yes, I'm here on behalf of SACS as well. I just wanted to remind everybody that this Friday, the 29th, from 12 until 3, another initiative that SACS has is that every month we are trying to reach out to our community and volunteer in terms of our time. And so on this Friday, we have the opportunity to volunteer at the Second Harvest Food Bank in terms of their production. We're making meals, for assembling meals for children. And so please, my message is this: we're allotted 10 spots. We're just about there, but I have to reach out to the lady at Second Harvest on Monday, so with a final count. So if you're interested, please reach out to me, email me, I'll get you the link. I think we have about 2 spots open, and that's it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Kelly. Chris?
Good morning. I just wanted to remind everyone that we're going to start our next book in our congregational read series, I guess you could call it, this Wednesday. We're now reading Cast by Isabel Wilkerson. This will be our first meeting Wednesday to start up the new book. It is from 5:30 to 7 on probably 6 or 7 consecutive Wednesdays. If you're not already on our email list, let me know, and I will be glad to add you. We do Zoom calls and discuss the book as we read it together, and everyone's welcome. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Chris. Are there any other announcements? No? Okay. So my opening words for today are a quote from Thich Nhat Hanh. If while washing dishes, we think only of the cup of tea that awaits us, thus hurrying to get the dishes out of the way as if they were a nuisance, then we are not, quote, washing the dishes to wash the dishes. What's more, we are not alive during the time we are washing the dishes. In fact, we are completely incapable of realizing the miracle of life while standing at the sink. If we can't wash the dishes, the chances are we won't be able to drink our tea either. While drinking the cup of tea, we will only be thinking of other things, barely aware of the cup in our hands. Thus, we are sucked away into the future, and we are incapable of actually living in this 1 minute of life. So I welcome you to join us in this 1 hour of life. Our opening music, We Will Not Stop Singing.
stop singing till the world can hear the song, till the world can sing along. We will not stop marching, we will not stop marching, we will not stop marching till the world can hear the song, till the world can sing along. Till the world can sing, till the world can sing, till the world can sing along. Till the world can sing, till the world can sing, till the world can sing along. We will not stop praying, we will not stop praying, we will not stop praying till we all can get along, till the world can sing our song. We will not stop shouting, we will not stop shouting, we will not stop shouting, shouting right from wrong, till the world can sing our song. Till the world can sing, till the world can sing, till the world can sing along. Till the world can sing, till the world can sing, till the world can sing along. We will not stop singing, we will not stop singing, we will not stop singing till the world can hear our song, till the world can sing along.
Thank you. That was wonderful. Our music has been so wonderful lately. Thank you for the people who pick it. All right. We are going to light our chalice now. If you have a chalice, you can go ahead and light it with me. In the light of truth and the warmth of love, we gather to seek, to sustain, and to share. Love is the spirit of this church, and service is its gift. This is our great covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek truth in love, and to help one another. So I'd like to take this time to welcome any visitors that we have joined us today. We're a lay-led community, which means we don't have a called minister who speaks every Sunday. Instead, we have a different speaker, sharing passions or knowledge or history or insight or all of those things. So I encourage you to come back often and hear about the breadth that we have to offer. Our joys and concerns, we take the time to share the important events in our lives. Mark Twain said, "To get the full value from joy, you must have someone to share it with." Sharing joys, sharing sorrows, these are the ways that we build and strengthen our community. So Amanda is going to go ahead and lead.
shared, let us lift up what was spoken or unspoken, whether shared from our sacred community here or our larger national, global community. May the light of compassion resonate within us all. So may it be.
Thank you, Amanda. Thank you to everyone who shared. Judith Stein-Farrell will be doing Time for All Ages today. Judith?
Thank you very much, Sarah. So Pastor Jim Coffin is going to talk to us according to the website about the difference between perception and reality. So I thought I'd share a short Zen Buddhist story this morning that might be able to relate to that. And Jim assures me that he can make it relate to that message later. So there was once an old farmer who had worked his crops for many years. One day, his horse ran away. Upon hearing this news, his neighbors came to visit. Such bad luck, they told the farmer, sympathetically. Maybe bad luck, said the farmer. Maybe good luck. We will see. The next morning, the horse returned, bringing with it 2 more wild horses. The neighbors stopped by. Such good luck, said the neighbors. Maybe good luck, said the farmer. Maybe bad luck. We will see. The following day, his son tried to ride one of the untamed horses and was immediately bucked off the horse and broke his leg. Again, the neighbors happened by. Very nosy neighbors, don't you think? Such bad luck, they said sympathetically. And the farmer said, as you might imagine, maybe bad luck, maybe good luck. We will see. The day after that, the military officials came to the village to draft the young man into the army to fight in a war. Seeing that the son's leg was broken, they passed him by. Such good luck, cried the neighbors. Maybe, said the farmer. And with that, I turn it back to you, Sarah.
Good luck, bad luck. Who's to say? All right. Our interlude and offering is your opportunity to support the programs that you believe in. And the Social Action Committee has chosen the Share the Plate portion of this to go towards this effort to helping feed our neighbors who worry about having enough food for their families. So if you could go ahead and, if you were so moved, send a check, use the online giving, go to this URL in whatever way is convenient for you while we listen to this music. All right, thank you, everyone. I am pleased to welcome Pastor Jim Coffin back as a speaker and a friend of our community. Jim's the leader of the Interfaith Council of Central Florida and is an active leader in bringing people together to improve the lives of everyone in our community. I'm very happy to have him back, and I'm looking forward to his topic today. Don't believe everything you think. Jim, go ahead.
Okay, well, thank you very much. It's a great pleasure to be here with you. And it's always a pleasure to be with you. You're a welcoming group. And so I always appreciate that. The title you've already heard, Don't Believe Everything You Think. And it's about perception and reality. And I'm not going to tell you anything new or profound. There are no great new revelations that you're going to have, but it's a reminder of something that we all know, but can easily forget. And sometimes I think that it's easier to remember these things when they're attached to stories. In fact, they're particularly memorable if they're attached to your own personal experience. And sometimes in hearing the personal experience of another, it reminds you of your personal experience, and then you hang these lessons on your own personal experience as well. And Judith shared the story that's, I think, typically a Buddhist parable. And certainly it's true that the way we perceive things may not be the way things actually are. And so I'd like to share with you some stories today, and one particularly that made an impact on me. And this story happened back in 1972. And I went to England to study at the Seventh-day Adventist College in England, which is just west of London, and a small school. And there were a few other Americans who were there, and many of us who were Americans many of the small group, I should say, of Americans like to play basketball. And so we would go down to the gym when classes were all over, and usually on a Friday afternoon, we'd have a good game of basketball, and there weren't that many who played, so it might be 3-on-3, it might be 4-on-4, but we played with enthusiasm and great gusto and gave it our heart and soul. And so that Friday afternoon, we were playing basketball, and these are just pickup teams that whoever happened to be there would get to play. Well, I went up for a rebound, and I felt a kind of a bang on my elbow, and came back down, and one of the fellows who was playing with us, his name was Bill, was holding his hands over his face, and obviously he was hurt, and we pulled his hands away, and my elbow had hit him in the nose, and it had left him with a nose that was kind of in a half moon shape. It was clearly broken, and so I apologized profusely, and it wasn't because I had been playing unnecessarily roughly. I'd been just enthusiastically going for the ball, and he was unwise enough to put his nose where my elbow was, and my elbow won the tussle. Well, even though this was an accident, I hadn't intended to create any pain. It was just one of those things that happened, and just the way we'd both gone for the ball, you know, that happened, and his nose got broken. I apologized to him because I felt bad. It was obvious that he was hurting, and I had an excuse for a car. Three of us had gone together and formed a syndicate and bought an old car that we'd paid 10 pounds for. That's $25 at that time. And we had to get it inspected, and we had to get insurance on it, and that cost a lot more than the actual cost of the car. But I said, look, let me take you down to the hospital, and they'll check it out and see what they can do. And all the way down, I apologized to him, and I said, look, Bill, I'm really, really sorry about this. I didn't mean to do this at all. And you know, I just really, really feel bad about it. And he said, don't worry about it. It's no big deal. These things happen. But somehow in my inner being, in my tender conscience, I felt that I had to make amends for the fact that I had inflicted this pain on him. And so we went to the hospital, and the doctor at the at the room there, poked and prodded on his nose, and he said, "Your nose is broken." And that was pretty obvious. I could have told him that because people typically don't have noses that are in half moon shapes unless they're broken or have been broken at some time in the past. So the doctor looked at it and he said, it has really swollen quite badly. And he said, I think we need to let the swelling go down before we try to set it. It's going to be really hard to set it when it's swollen like that. So come back on Monday or Tuesday and we'll get it taken care of. Well, by this time, poor Bill had a thumping headache. He really, he felt terrible. And all the way back, I was sort of like, oh boy, I wish this hadn't happened, Bill. I'm really sorry. And, you know, he kept trying to discount my concern. Don't worry about it. But somehow inside, I had trouble accepting this. And so we got back to the school and he said, I don't think I'll go to the cafeteria tonight. He said, I just don't feel like it. I said, oh, no problem. I'll get your food for you. And so all that weekend, I went to the cafeteria every meal, brought him his food back in his room, made sure that he had plenty of Advil or whatever it was that he was taking to try to stop the pain. And on the appointed time, I don't remember if it was Monday or Tuesday, but I took him back to the hospital. And the same doctor was there and the same doctor poked and prodded and, you know, kind of did a little bit of movement of the nose and Bill winced and grimaced and it was very painful for him, obviously. And the doctor said, I believe your nose is knitted a little faster than we had anticipated. And I don't think we're going to be able to set it unless we re-break it. And that was not good news. And it wasn't good news for me either. I felt sorry for Bill because he'd gone through enough pain when I broke his nose, but now they were going to do this in a very professional way. Anyway, I said, well, I'll take you to the other hospital where it was done. You know, the hospitals specialize in different things, and one specialized in diagnosing broken noses and the other specialized in breaking noses. And so I took him, it was a day or two more passed before they could get him booked into the hospital that specialized in breaking noses. And so I took him there and felt really bad when I left him, and he wasn't in the best of spirits. He was pretty glum about the idea that his nose was going to be broken again. And so I apologized and said, you know, I'm really, really sorry about this. And he said, look, just don't worry about it. But, you know, the interesting thing is we're talking here about not believing everything you think. And so in my mind, I just couldn't believe that he wasn't angry at me in some way, that he wasn't holding some kind of a grudge against me. And so my perception is there's a broken relationship here. The reality is there was no broken relationship at all. He took it in stride, but somehow I couldn't take it in stride. Well, I left him at the hospital and I told him that I would come back and see him. He was supposed to stay overnight. And so I brought 2 or 3 other students with me to visit Bill in the hospital. And so he, when we got there, he was in bed and they had broken his nose, and they have this really ingenious little device for breaking noses. It's kind of an impact hammer that's on a tight spring, padded on the end. So they pull it back and they trigger it and bang, it hits you and it breaks your nose. If you're ever needing to have a nose broken, at least that's the way they did it all those years ago in England. Now we may have other devices for breaking noses now, I don't know. Now, I don't mean to be boastful or anything, but when I broke Bill's nose, it did not bleed at all. It was nice, clean, tidy. Yes, it was a half moon, and yes, it wasn't sightly and all that kind of thing, but I did a really good, clean, almost professional job in the way I did it. However, when the professionals got to him with their little impact hammer and broke his nose, it bled and it bled and it bled, and they gave him coagulants to try to get the bleeding stopped, and that really didn't stop it. So they stuffed cotton wool up his nose and cotton packing up his nose and just put a piece of tape across it. And that was it. And they put a plaster cast on him. And so we got there and he was black and blue above his eyes as well as below his eyes. He looked like he'd been in the ring with Muhammad Ali or Mike Tyson or somebody like that. And oh man, I felt absolutely terrible to see what he looked like. He looked absolutely miserable. And so again, I apologized. I said, "Oh, Bill, I'm really, really sorry about this thing. You know, I didn't mean to do this to you." And he said, "That's no problem. Don't worry about it." And yet I did worry about it. And you know, some of us were raised with a lot of instruction, a lot of pushing toward a lot of guilt. And I was one of those who couldn't give up the guilt. If I did something that was out of line, it made me feel guilty. And so it made me feel guilty that I had done this to my friend, no matter what, you know, even though I hadn't intended to. Well, I go back the next morning, pick him up, take him back to the school. And of course, he doesn't feel like going to class because he's got such a splitting headache for having had his nose broken again this way. And so I said, "Look, I'll take notes." We were in the same classes for the most part. I'll take notes for you so that you don't miss out on anything. And I arranged for other students to take notes where I wasn't in the class. And I took meals to him, and you know, slowly he got better and started going back to class himself. But I'd see him with this plaster cast across his face, and it was really hard to look at. In fact, it was so hard to look at that I tended to try to avoid him, except when I had to do something, you know, because I just felt guilty when I was with him. So finally the day came when it was time to go get the cast off his face. And of course I wanted to make sure that he had a ride there. And so I offered to take him in my car, and he said, "That's fine." So I took him to the hospital, and they took the cast off. And wouldn't you know, they hadn't done a good job setting his nose, and it was almost as crooked the other way as it had been when I broke it. And they looked at it and they said, "Well, it wasn't too good a job, was it?" You know, and they kind of talked about it, and they said, "There's nothing really we can do about it now, unless you wanted to have your nose broken again." And he said, "No, let's not do that." So now here is this guy who's going to go through life with a crooked nose because of the fact that my elbow had made contact with him in a little game of 3-on-3 or 4-on-4 or whatever it was. And it really bothered me to think that, you know, I had caused somebody that kind of pain, and it was going to be long-lasting pain. And so I had this problem of this guilt that I was bearing. The perception was he must be upset with me. He wasn't upset with me, but I couldn't kind of get to that point. Well, finally, something began to work in my brain, and it was like, if he says it, you know, you've got to accept it at some point. You know, you can't keep going on what you're thinking, what you're feeling. Interestingly, and I'll come back to the story about Bill in just a moment. When I was a kid growing up, I grew up near an Amish community in Missouri, and so the Amish, as you know, drive horses and buggies, and they tend to live in a different era. Even though they're here today, they tend to live in a different era. And these are much more conservative Amish than you would find, for the most part, in Pennsylvania. You know, they really are ultra conservative Amish. Well, it just so happened that one of the Amish men got a little notice in the mail offering him to join a book club. And he thought, well, that looks interesting. And, you know, he would only have to, you know, buy 2 books a year or whatever it was to get the discounts, or however it all worked out. And he thought, that's good, I'll do that. And so he, first of all, bought an atlas. And that was interesting because it gave him some ideas about where things were in the world and how people lived and all that. And then he bought the book, The Power of Positive Thinking by Norman Vincent Peale. And he thought, you know, this is good. This is pretty upbeat material. Well, one day there were some people over at his house, and they got to talking about someplace in the world, and he said, well, wait just a minute, let me get my atlas and we can look at where it is. And so he brought out the atlas, and they said, where did you get that? Well, he said, I joined a book club. And they said, what other books have you got? And well, he said, I've got this book, The Power of Positive Thinking by Norman Vincent Peale. And so he didn't think much about it, but his neighbors reported him to the church hierarchy, and the elders came and talked to him and said, you know, who told you you could join the book club? And well, he said, I don't have to ask anybody what I can do. I can do whatever I want. And so they said, because he wouldn't repent and recant and all that kind of thing, they excommunicated him. And so he left and went out and began to live a more modern life. And I heard him tell some stories about 8 years after he had left the Amish. And he said, you know, I still, whenever I put a key in the ignition of my car, I still have pangs of conscience. I still feel like I'm doing something I shouldn't be doing. There's this inner voice in me that says, you know, this is bad, you shouldn't be doing this. And I have to kind of move beyond that. You know, all of us grow up, now those are kind of do and don't type things, but all of us grow up in life with certain perceptions that we tend to hang on to. We absorbed them. They weren't, some of them were actually inculcated into us, and others were just absorbed by the society around us or by the people with whom we interacted or whatever. And we assume that the way that it's done is the way it should be done in our subgroup or whatever it might be, the group that we find affinity with. And it's hard for us to get over these attitudes and these thoughts that we have in our mind. And yet those don't necessarily equate to reality. Well, going back to my story about Bill, finally I said, you know, you have to move beyond this, Jim. You know, it's kind of this, you know, I call it intellectual override. You may feel something, you may believe something, but there is something that's also telling you that you need to re-examine this, that it may not be a trustworthy thought that you have, it may not be an accurate thought, it may not be a truthful thought. And so even though you feel it strongly and so on, you have to kind of override it with an intellectual exercise. And so finally I said, you know, he says that it's not a problem. He says he forgives you. In fact, he doesn't really have anything to forgive because he never held a grudge in the first place. Now just accept it and get on with it. Change your thought pattern. Because as long as you cling to this idea that this is what has to be, and this is the way it is, you're going to miss out on life. You're going to miss out on a good friendship. Well, there's just one more part of this story, and it was quite an epiphany for me, just because I had felt so badly about the fact that every time I saw this guy with the crooked nose, you know, I had to be reminded of the fact that I had done it, and I felt guilty about it. Well, we went our separate ways, and I moved to Australia and was down there a number of years and came back, and Bill was a minister as well. And we happened to be working in the same general region here in the United States. And so they had a big ministers meeting, and I went to it and he went to it, and I saw him sitting in the back of the room, and I thought, oh, I've got to go up and see him and kind of check out his nose. And so I, after the meeting, went back to where he was, and I looked at him, and I thought his nose looks pretty good to me. I can't see that it's crooked like I remember it being crooked. And so I said to him, you know, as I remember this story, you know, your nose was about as crooked the other direction, you know, after you got it rebroken as it had been originally. And he said, yeah, that's right, it was. I said, well, it looks pretty good now. You know, I don't see any crooks in it. Well, he said, a couple of years ago, I was out playing softball and I got hit in the nose with a line drive, and it broke my nose and straightened it up. And then I began to feel really self-righteous, because my, just think if I hadn't broken his nose, anyway. But it made a significant impact on me to realize that what's going on in my brain doesn't equate to reality. And this is just a very ordinary story. There's nothing particularly special about it, except that sometimes we have this epiphany, this sort of dawning of the light, that we really need to question what's going on in our minds, because it may not equate with reality. Perception and reality are not the same thing. And we can operate on our perception, but if we do, we may be missing out on a tremendous amount in life, or we may be inflicting pain on other people, or just any number of things. But it's better if we can train our perception to equal our reality, as opposed to having a perception that is divergent from our reality. Now, in the world that we're in today, it just so happens that there's a tremendous amount of perception out there that you wonder, how in the world did that perception ever come about? Where did these ideas come up? And yet that is the reality that people are operating on. Now, I don't, as I said, I'm not going to teach you anything new, because all of you know this. And in fact, Unitarians, I think, probably know it more than many other groups do, because of the nature of your approach to truth, and the nature of your approach to discussion and dialogue, and testing things to make sure that they're correct. I'd like to share just a couple of quotes with you here. Some of these I know who said them, and some I don't. And again, these are things that you know already. It's just reinforcement. Movie star Tom Cruise said, "Perception and reality are two different things." Another statement that I came across that it was not identified who said it: "Perception is more important than reality." Okay, if someone perceives something to be true, it is more important than if it is in fact true. At least to them it is. And they're going to act upon that as if it's reality. They're going to believe it, and they're going to do whatever this perception calls for. Another quote: "Your opinion is your opinion, and your perception is your perception. Do not confuse them with fact or truth." It's and again, as I said, I'm preaching to the choir here, but all of us need to be reminded, I think, of things that we already know, because it's easy for us to slip back into patterns that are disadvantageous to us, that are counterproductive. It is not reality that shapes us, but the lens through which your brain views the world that shapes your reality. And so we have all of these things. Just one more quick story. A few years ago, my wife was going to Dallas to have a surgery, and so we said, let's drive across, and so we were going through Shreveport, Louisiana, and my wife likes to go into little antique shops, thrift stores, those kind of places, not super sophisticated antiques that are going to break the bank to buy, but things that people have thrown out because they don't want them anymore, flea market type things. Anyway, we went into this little store and engaged in conversation with the woman who was there, and she was very friendly, and we got to talking, and ultimately it came out what I did, that I worked with the Interfaith Council. And so one of her very first comments was, I always like to read about everybody. I want both sides of the story. I really do a lot of my own research. And then she said, now, do you allow Muslims in the Interfaith Council? And I said, oh yeah, we do. I said, Muslims, Jews, Hindus, Buddhists, Christians, you name it, we're all in there together. And well, she said, I don't have much time for Muslims. She said they, when the 9/11 bombing took place of the crashing of the plane at the Twin Towers, She said there was not one Muslim in the United States or in the world who spoke out against it. And I said, oh, really? And I said, that's interesting. I said, well, what did your Muslim friends say when you talked to them about it? Were they against it? Of course, I knew she had no Muslim friends. And well, I've never talked to anybody about it. I said, well, you know, I can understand that. You may not know any Muslims. So when you did your Google search about quotes condemning or supporting what was done on 9/11, what the Muslims had done, did you find that all of them said, no, this is a great thing, this is wonderful? Or did you find that at least some people, you know, said, no, this is really, really bad? Well, she said, I don't know that I ever did a Google search about that, you know. And I said, well, you're pretty confident that Muslims don't deserve to be treated well because of the way they reacted to 9/11. And I said, there are actually, you know, a whole ream of statements. It's page after page after page of Muslim leaders around the world who condemned what was done on 9/11. And I said, I think that you probably, knowing that you like to look at both sides of the issue, you probably would like to look at that. And so I could tell she was getting a little more uncomfortable. And well, she said, I just don't like the way Muslims treat their women. And I said, well, you know, my guess is that there are Muslims who treat women badly, because I haven't known any group that doesn't have some people who in it who treat their women badly. I think that's, you know, just one of the unfortunate things about the world. But I said, you know, I would like to ask you just one thing, you know, because you like to look at both sides of the issue. I said, how do you explain the fact that there are 8 Muslim majority countries that have had a woman as president or prime minister? This group of people who treat women so badly, 8 countries that have had a woman as president or prime minister, and we've never had a female president in the United States. How do you fit that into the equation? And she said, I don't want to talk about this anymore. And I said, well, you know, I know that you've said, you know, you really like to look at both sides of the issue. And so I said, that's all. She said, I told you I don't want to talk about this anymore, because she had a perception and she wasn't interested in having to deal with anything that called her perception into question. And unfortunately, we seem to be losing the ability as a society to move beyond our perceptions. And our perceptions almost always limit us if we're not willing to interrogate the perception, if we're not willing to test it, if we're not willing to engage in dialogue about it, to get to what the facts really are. We live in a time where there's the misguided idea that there are alternative facts, that it's not just one set of facts, there's a whole lot of different facts. No, there are facts and there are perceptions. And it's our obligation and our responsibility as responsible citizens of a diverse world to make sure that we don't let our perceptions reign supreme and lead us down a path that separates us, alienates us, causes dissension, and actually keeps us from experiencing the fullness of life that we really should have. So that's all I have to say about that. And thank you very much for the opportunity to be with you. And as I said, nothing new, just a reminder of what you already know, what you already do, but let's just try to do it even better. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jim. That is a reminder that one can never hear too often. It's we do very much get lost in our perceptions and start to believe the reality of them. All right, let us go ahead and extinguish the chalice. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again. All right, and our closing music for All That Is Our Life. Wonderful. For my closing words today, I watched the inauguration ceremonies on Wednesday, and the words of the Poet Laureate Amanda Gorman were so moving to me. I'm going to read just a small section of what she said. If you have not heard this, it is well worth going to see the entirety of it. When day comes, we step out of the shade, aflame and unafraid. The new dawn blooms as we free it, for there is always light. If only we're brave enough to see it, if only we're brave enough to be it. So thank you everyone for coming and listening today. And if you would like to now go ahead and unmute, we can go ahead and enjoy our time together.
you.